Yo, what up, Geek Swag family? Hopefully all is well out there in Geek Swag U land. This is none other than your admin, your host, TJ Hines of REI Geek Swag U, also known as REI Geek Swag on IG. Are you following me on IG? If not, what the hell are you doing? Also formerly known as Mr. Flipper House on YouTube with nearly 1 million views collectively on that channel. Hey, just a few days back, I listed the 4 mistakes that most people make when starting out in this business, trying to prospect and get their first deal closed. Well, what we're gonna talk about is one of those mediums in regards to all the mistakes using SMS, cold calling, and RVMs. Today, we're going to specifically talk about cold calling, some of the common mistakes that most people make when cold calling, and they think that the business does not work for them. So I'm here to dispel those myths for you today. So hopefully you can gain enough confidence to continue to move forward until you get that first deal closed out. And trust me, once you get that first deal closed out, my friend, the anatomy of the first deal says, hey, once the first deal is closed, usually the second deal, the third deal, the fourth deal, and the fifth deal usually come in rapid succession. So I tell you, keep grinding, keep pushing, keep holding on to what's near and dear to your heart, which is bringing your real estate goals to life. Stay tuned. REI, Geek Swag, it's your time to get it back. Okay, so I'm glad that you made it on back. And here we are about to discuss the medium of cold calling and some of the biggest mistakes that new people make when starting out in this business. Not only am I going to discuss, of course, the mistakes that most people make, but the solutions behind these mistakes and how you can rectify them to now start working in your favor. The biggest mistake that most people make when cold calling is they have this level expectation in their mind that everyone's going to tell them yes when they pick up the phone. Hey, yeah, I'm ready to sell. And the likelihood chances of that happening are slim to none. Only 2% of the marketplace is going to be ready to transact with you right then and there. So what happens to the other 98%? Well, of course, you got to continue to follow up with them, nurture and nourish them. All right. So that is number one. That's the biggest mistake that most people have when cold calling. Another mistake that people have when cold calling is they never call the entire list all the way through. And the reason why they don't do it is because they become overly frustrated when they continue to hear no, I don't want to sell. No, I don't want to sell. No, I don't want to sell. So what that person thinks in their mind is, number one, the business does not work, or at least it doesn't work for them. And that's not true. You're not working the universal laws of cold calling. So what you have to do in order to increase your chances to get traction cold calling, you must call that list entirely all the way through, not just one time, my friend. You must call that list at least 6 to 8 times all the way through before you decide to move on to the next list. Why? Because anytime you call the list all the way through, likelihood chances of you getting in contact with each and every lead on that list is probably slim to none. There's been many times where we've called people 4 and 5 and 6 times and they don't answer until the 7th call. Okay, so you cannot give up on the list like that. In all actuality, people are interested in selling their property, but they may not just be interested in selling you their property right now. Okay. And so that is something that you must embed in your own mind, that you must continue to call the list all the way through at least 6 to 8 times in order to start generating good responses from that list. Another mistake that most people make, if they ever get to the point of calling the list all the way through for the first time, is they do not switch up their caller IDs. Guys, these sellers are very smart. And just as you're smart enough to know when the same number keeps calling you that you do not know, the likelihood chances of you blocking that number goes up quite a bit, right? Well, the sellers are thinking the same thing. If you keep using the same number to call these sellers over and over and over again, guess what they're going to do? They're going to block that number to where now you're not going to be able to get in contact with them anymore. So you should have at least 3 caller IDs that you can use each and every time you call a list all the way through to increase your chances of getting better response rates. Another mistake that most noobs make are leaving freaking voicemails for cold calls. Listen, you never leave a voicemail until you've built rapport with that seller, meaning you already had a genuine conversation with them that lasted longer than 2 or 3 minutes. So that way you can take notes, and then the next time you talk to them, now you can reiterate what you're calling about on that voicemail and maybe even highlight some of those notes that you've taken on the voicemail when you leave it. So now they can recall the conversation that they had with you. Now they can recall who you actually are. But when you leave voicemails by just leaving cold calls, by cold calling, and you've never gotten in contact with that person, guess what happens when they listen to that voicemail? If they're not interested in selling their house at that specific time and they don't want you calling anymore, guess what they're going to do? They're going to block your damn number. And now you're not going to be able to get in contact with that person. Do not leave voicemails for cold calls. You only leave voicemails for warm calls, meaning you've had a genuine conversation with that seller already. And last but not least, giving up on the call too soon. And this is a prime example of what I'm talking about. You get a seller that answers the phone. You ask them, do they have interest in selling their home at the time? They tell you no, and you immediately hang up the phone. That is a big no, my friend. You have to be ready to fire with probing questions so that way you can determine if they should be followed up with again in the future the proper way. And one of those questions should be, oh, are you considering maybe selling in the next 6 to 12 months? Right? When you ask this question, essentially now they're going to tell you yes or no. And if they tell you yes, then you're going to follow up with another question. Are you considering selling more towards the latter of 12 months or more closer to that 6-month mark? And the reason why you want to ask this question is because you better know how to follow up with them when it's that time for you to get back in contact with them. So if they say, hey, I'm interested in selling more closer to 6 months, then now you're going to set a follow-up to get in contact with that person in the next 3.5 to 4 months to make sure you don't miss out on that opportunity when they are ready to sell. Now, let's just say that they say, hey, you know what? I'm not interested in selling in the next 6 to 12 months either. Then you be ready to fire with another probing question. That probing question is, well, do you have any other homes here in this area that you may be interested in selling right now at the moment for the right offer? You'd be surprised how many sellers will tell you, you know what? I wasn't considering, but I do have another property over here that I may be interested in selling. So you should never give up right then and there when you hear that no and just become overly frustrated, okay? Just because people tell you no right now does not necessarily mean it's no forever. This also means when they tell you no to all of those probing questions, then you still set a follow-up 3 months to give that person a call again. The only time you don't follow up again is if you have the wrong person that you're looking for, or if they say, hey, I'm on the do not call list, do not ever call me again. And then respectfully, by law, legally, you have to take them off the list. And that is going to do it for today, my friend. Hopefully what I've shared with you gives you some wisdom, gives you some insight, and even confidence to continue to move forward, guys. You will always hear more no's in this business before you get that dominating yes that can change your life. All it takes is one yes to change your entire financial outlook on life. But if you give up before then guess what you do? You go back to what you don't want to do, the shit that you're comfortable doing, the shit that you're not happy with. So continue to push forward, and you got me here to back you up in any way possible. If you have any comments, inquiries, questions in regards to this tutorial and you're watching it here in our Facebook group, REI Geek Swag U, feel free to leave them below down in the comment section. If you're watching this tutorial through the broadcast email on our email list, then go ahead and just reply to this email with any questions or comments that you have, and I'll get back with you here as soon as I can. You guys have a blessed, amazing day. This is TJ Hines at REI Geek Swag. We out of here. Peace.